You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
Welcome back to Talkin' Ball, everyone. I'm Pat Leonard. We will go around the league like we always do, coming out of a crazy week 2. We will talk to Antwan Staley, the New York Daily News' Jets beat writer, my colleague, fresh off the airplane from Cleveland after a wild Jets victory. Joe Flacco, Robert Saleh pumping their fist after getting it done. But we're going to start this New York football episode of Talkin' Ball with the 2-0 New York Giants. That's right. 6 teams 2-0 in the NFL after week 2. It's the Eagles, the Bucks, the Dolphins, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Giants, with the Dallas Cowboys coming to MetLife Stadium for Monday Night Football in week 3. Doesn't get any better than this. So many of these close games went the other way in years past. Now they're going the Giants' way. They deserve credit for making these games go that way, whether it's Graham Gano and 4 field goals, Wink Martindale's defense getting it done. Center John Feliciano honestly told me in the locker room after the game, we thank the Giants defense for what they did, for getting this victory, for looking like they can help us get more down the road. And that's something you have to take away from the Giants' start. It looks like if they're facing a team that doesn't have an elite quarterback, that Martindale's defense will consistently give them a chance. They might not win all the games, but they will likely be in these games in the fourth quarter. They did it to Ryan Tannehill and the Titans. They did it to Baker Mayfield and the Panthers. They have a Dak Prescott-less Cowboys team led by Cooper Rush. No slouch, but not Aaron Rodgers. They have the Houston Texans and Davis Mills on their schedule. They have Geno Smith with the Seattle Seahawks. This is actually something our guest on Talkin' Ball, Sal Palantonio, referenced and brought up. And a point he made was that Martindale's presence in this division changed the calculus in the NFC East. So far, we've seen that is true. The Giants do not generate much pressure on the quarterback with a 4-man rush, but Martindale times these blitzes well. You saw Julian Love make one of the plays of the game, a sack of Mayfield. The Panthers have to punt the ball away in the fourth quarter and never get it back. Just one example of how they are using their personnel to affect these games. We saw 3 safeties on the field most of this game compared to mostly 2 linebackers on the field in Tennessee. Jalen Smith now on the Giants defense signed to their practice squad, in my opinion, to be elevated and to play as a second effective inside linebacker against a run-heavier approach from Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, and the Dallas Cowboys. This is how the Giants are going to evolve every week and try to put together a game plan to win. It's fascinating to watch. Not everything's perfect, though. What I like about Brian Daboll and what I like about any head coach who handles things this way, he is putting together a plan every week for the Giants to try to win a game. And that could mean a player sitting that you don't expect, or it could mean benching a player who just hasn't earned it with his play the previous week. Now, you have to be consistent if you're a head coach doing this. If you're not consistent, if you're not genuine, it will not work. Players will see through if you are favoring players, if it's not a meritocracy. But I will give Daboll credit for this after 2 weeks. He barely played Kadarius Toney in week 1 because he hadn't earned the playing time. He hasn't been on the field. In week 2, he decides that David Sills gives them a better opportunity at wide receiver than Kenny Golladay, and Golladay only plays 2 snaps. In week 2, not only did Martindale add more speed to the field with 3 safeties to attack the Panthers and Christian McCaffrey, but Austin Calitro, the inside linebacker, had not played well enough against Tennessee. So he sees only 5 snaps in week 2. Dane Belton, the rookie safety, far from perfect in this game, by the way, but kudos to him for playing a heavy amount of snaps, but also an example of the Giants saying, let's put a guy on the field who we think can affect the game better than another player did the previous week. Now, this is all in the spirit of being constructive, building a foundation. But it's not just about winning the games this week. It's about building a culture of you have to earn it. And Joe Judge did this as a head coach. Pat Shurmur was a little less consistent about the decisions week to week. But this is how you build a team. You show people what's expected, and if they don't meet it, then you let somebody else play and give them an opportunity because everybody else is working hard. Now, I will say this about Kenny Golladay. I think Kenny's going to respond well to this. I think Kenny Golladay is going to, again, at some point soon, be a major part of a game plan because it favors what the Giants need to do on that specific week. Kenny deserves some credit here. He was on the field all summer. He and Tony both were off the field in the spring coming off off-season procedures. I knew about Tony's. We didn't know about Kenny's until late in the summer. Golladay was putting in the work. Golladay was on the field in training camp. Tony is the one whose hamstring acted up, who wasn't on the field a lot, who goes last in a lot of drills, who's kneeling with his helmet off often. Kenny Golladay is not that. And I don't think we should lump Kenny Golladay into some group of people who are not doing what it takes for the Giants. Now, did he look slower at the start of training camp? Sure. Nobody revealed until late in camp, including the team or Golladay, that he had some sort of procedure in the offseason. So I thought that was unfair to this wide receiver, frankly. Now, David Sills has earned time. Richie James has earned time. Sterling Shepard has earned time. So I'm not taking anything away from those guys. I'm just bringing up this point and this point only. Kenny Golladay is a professional. He's a veteran. He did not act up on the sideline during the Giants game against the Panthers, even though he wasn't playing, only 2 snaps in the red zone. I know he wasn't in the locker room afterwards. You'd like guys to stand accountable. But I think that once we hear from Golladay and once we see how the Giants deploy their personnel here in the future, I think he's going to be a part of what they do. I don't think he's not going to be a part of what this Giants team builds this year. Now, is this his final season as a Giant? Yes, I think it is. But I don't think he's going to cause a problem. I think he's going to be part of the short-term solution. Now, Daniel Jones. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't close to perfect. John Feliciano, the center for the Giants, actually thanked the defense in the locker room in front of me, kind of said it to me looking around the locker room. We thank them for winning this game. The Giants offense knows that they didn't do enough. Daniel Jones missed a couple opportunities in the red zone. Sterling Shepard looked like he was open on one play. Kadarius Toney coming across the formation on a read option. Jones probably should have given it to Toney instead of keeping it. I know I'm Monday morning quarterbacking here, but frankly, I think he knows that those are missed opportunities. The throw right before halftime, almost intercepted in zone coverage by Frankie Louvu of the Panthers. A scary decision, just like Jones's in week 1 in Tennessee, intercepted in the end zone by Amani Hooker. And the fans were booing the 2-0 Giants going into halftime at MetLife Stadium in their home opener. So that's where the offense is. That's where Jones is in these first halves. However, in a season where all the pressure is on number 8, in a season, in a week 2, where Jones and the offense were looking like the thing holding the team back, he steps up and makes a big-time throw on a 3rd down to Richie James. He leads them on a touchdown drive to answer emphatically a 3-play, 67-yard touchdown drive for the Panthers with Baker Mayfield and DJ Moore leading the way. And I think Jones's toughness, Jones's resilience, what you saw from him on that last play icing the game, a naked bootleg where he takes it on himself to improvise, puts his foot in the ground past Henry Anderson, the defensive lineman for the Panthers, drives up the middle of the field into traffic, slides across the NFL logo across the 50-yard line. You saw how many teammates patting him on the helmet. And this is a guy that teammates respond to, that players believe in. It just adds such intrigue to the Giants season because coming in, the expectations were low and it's still early. But we see Joe Shane obviously doing his job out on the road, scouting all of these quarterbacks. The Giants thinking maybe they'll have a high draft pick and maybe they'll be drafting their quarterback of the future. But Jones, if the Giants keep winning and he is a part of these wins as he has been, especially in week 2, bouncing back, making that play at the end of the game, it'll be interesting to see how Dable, how Shane, how the Giants respond to that, how ownership responds to that, and how Jones, whether he can carve out a long-term future here. Because let's just be fair. If the Giants are losing games and Jones is the reason why, we all know where it's headed. The Giants are winning games and Jones is a reason why, then where is that headed? This should be a meritocracy. Dable has shown it's a meritocracy, and we will see what Jones is able to earn if the Giants keep winning these games. We'll be right back on Talkin' Ball with Antwan Staley, the Jets beat writer for the New York Daily News. All right, welcome back to Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard. Special guest with us on the New York football episode. The Giants are 2-0, but they were not a part of the most exciting game in New York football in week 2 of the NFL season. That was the New York Jets. Antwan Staley of the Daily News was there in person to see it go down. Antwan, thanks for joining us. I know you're fresh off the plane from Cleveland. Must be a whirlwind right now.
Yeah, it was definitely a great win, and just crazy because I think everybody thought the game was over when Nick Chubb scored that touchdown with 1:55 left in the game, and people were writing their stories. I'm sure you've been there. You know, you have the story just kind of written up, and all of a sudden, you know, things just gotta go haywire. You're gonna have to change a whole lot of things in a short amount of time. But yeah, it was definitely a win needed for the Jets too, especially because you don't want to go 0-2, especially coming back home to play a Cincinnati team who's also 0-2, and you know, probably going to be very angry once they get to MetLife Stadium.
That's right. And lost to the Jets there last season as well. So take me inside the locker room in Cleveland with the Jets, inside that visitor's locker room. Just what was it like? Because we saw a couple clips of Joe Flacco on television, but you were there. Like, tell us what that was like, the emotions in the visitor's room there.
Exuberance. That's probably the best way I think they know how to describe it, because you know, you had a team that was, you know, you're coming off a very disappointing week 1 loss against the Baltimore Ravens. And, you know, this team all week to talk about where we're not the same Jets. We're not, this is a totally different New York Jets team than it has been in years past. And then now to put that all together, especially what they were able to do offensively, be able to score 14 points in the first half, and also turn that around and score, you know, 17 in the second half and fourth quarter in particular. And Garrett Wilson was just a man of us boys. His second game in the NFL, and you know, to put up the yards and the amount of catches that he did on 14 targets was just outstanding. But everybody was just so excited, as you can imagine, and definitely, you know, a little bit of surprise, but at the same time, something that they knew that they had been talking about. This team had been, you know, different all year long throughout the spring and summer, and kind of all just kind of came together again to win against Cleveland.
And I'm glad you mentioned kind of the talk leading up to the game, because I wanted to ask you about, everyone was talking about it in the league, obviously, when Robert Saleh seemed to have his backup and he said, I'm taking receipts on all the people who continually mock us. And, you know, can you tell us, how was that received by the players going into the game? How much do they have Saleh's back? Is this game an indication of this? And then also, did you get a sense for maybe the pressure on Saleh coming out of making those comments to deliver, and how that maybe was received around the league or in the Jets building, you know, in the front office, et cetera?
Well, I'll tell you, like, I'll mention the second part first, because yeah, it's a lot of pressure making those comments, because a lot of people, I mean, I don't know if people were mocking the Jets as much as after the week 1 loss, but after he made the comments, he was definitely getting a lot of blowback on social media and things of that nature, because people were saying, oh, you know, like taking receipts, like the Jets hadn't made the playoffs since 2010. So how, you know, and they just, you know, I got a whole bunch of comments in regards to that. So it was a lot of pressure on them to deliver this particular week, to be able to come back and, you know, after that loss against the Ravens, to be able to put it together and get a win. But as far as like your question about the players, they backed it up. Like they loved those comments by Robert Saleh. They felt pressure to be able to want to produce for him because he made comments like that. And that goes a long way in the locker room. When players have your back like that and want to stick up for you and want to be able to prove you right on the field. And yeah, they definitely felt like, you know what, the coach has our back. He's staying up for the locker room. We need to go out there and put a good foot forward and put out a great performance, unlike we were able to do against Baltimore. And I think you kind of saw that.
And what about the comment he made? I think it was in an ESPN radio interview where he said that this was an expansion franchise before Joe Douglas got here. Like, is that something that a head coach in the NFL can say and not receive pressure or blowback from, you know, either ownership of the team that is employing him and paying him, or his colleagues around the league when you say something like that?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard like a former coach. I mean, a coach take a shot at a former regime like that. Like that was pretty direct. Yeah,
No kidding. Yeah.
I've never like I've heard like people kind of dance around the question or something like that, but he directly, just came out and said, you know what, this was not a good organization. This is not a good roster when we took over. Which I think everybody knew that it was a bad situation, from Adam Gase and that whole regime there, and I think that's part of the reason why I've told people just you kind of have to be patient. This is only his second year in the league, his second game in year two, and it's going
Yeah.
to take some time for everything to come together. But yeah, I've never heard anything like that. Like the receipts comment is one thing, but also the kind of the blowback he received from just taking a shot at Adam Gase and the former general manager too of the Jets too as well. So yeah, it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely interesting to hear that.
Right. So then take me to the first quarter. They go down 7-0 early and they call a fake punt. Braden Mann executes it with Jeff Smith, and then the Jets go down and score. When you're sitting there and watching, did that come off at the time to you as a desperate decision by Saleh, or was that an all gas, no breaks, this is how I'm always going to coach kind of decision?
I think it was a tone setter. I think obviously, I think last week it was very vanilla offensively, and I came into this week saying that Mike LaFleur needs to spice it up a little bit, like have some creativity to the offense. And I guess they read the article because they definitely did that this upcoming week too. They ran some jet sweeps there. They ran some slants to Garrett Wilson, got him the ball early. And in that situation, they felt the offense was seeming like, oh, well, this looks like last week where the offense looked completely flat. And then to be able to run that fake punt like that and, Jeff Smith making that big play, I think that gave the team some energy, some juice that they desperately needed. And, of course, like you said, they went down and scored a touchdown. Got another one before halftime, too, as well. But, yeah, I definitely think the offense seemed like it was just stagnant, just like running in place there. And until that play happened. And I felt like that really gave them life and also turned the whole game around.
And so when I look at the NFL passing leaders coming out of week 2, I see Herbert is 4th and Mahomes is 5th, and you expect that. I see Joe Flacco sitting 3rd with 616 passing yards. So you're mentioning Mike LaFleur, the offense, what they had to do coming out of week 1. But just flat out, for people who either been watching every snap or haven't watched the Jets yet, why is Flacco 3rd in the NFL in passing right now?
Well, I mean, yesterday, it was just like a crazy performance that they put on, to be quite honest with you. Joe Flacco, I'll give you a stat, too. He is the first Jets quarterback to have back-to-back, 300-yard games since Chad Pennington in 2006.
Get out of here. That is a great stat.
Yeah, so that's how far it goes back. But yeah, the first game of the season, he threw for 300 yards. A lot of that was kind of garbage time when the Jets were down by so much and trying to get something going. But yesterday, down in the game too as well, and especially in that fourth quarter where they scored 17 points, Flacco was just hitting the sidelines, hitting the middle, going to Garrett Wilson, and you really don't see that a veteran going to a young guy like that so early on in his career, but he clearly has a lot of confidence in Garrett Wilson to be able to make some plays. And, even, after the drop by Garrett Wilson, that at that time it looked like it might have sealed the deal for the Jets too. He went back to him whenever they got the ball again, and, he produced and ended up scoring the game-winning touchdown, of course, and ended up winning the game. But, yeah, Flacco, I definitely think, week 1 was a little bit shaky. A lot of Jets fans wanted him benched there and put Mike White in, but the offensive line did a much better job. Joe Flacco did a much better job with decision making, and I definitely think you saw that yesterday against the Browns.
Flacco, 26 of 44, 307, 4 touchdowns. You have mentioned Garrett Wilson about 5 times, so I need to ask you about him. And I know you've mentioned him 5 times for a reason, but I wanted to bring something up too. You had a quote in your story about him going into the week. I know he spent a lot of his childhood in Dublin, Ohio. He had a quote where he said, "The air is real smooth in Ohio." How did you interpret that, first of all? Because it almost sounded like a guy who was confident he was going to perform at home. But was there something special about this game where he was playing it, and that's part of why he balled out? Or do you see special qualities in this kid And that's not only why he's producing, but why Flacco is throwing him the ball so regularly, like you said.
It's both. It's definitely both. I think, wanting to produce, wanting to go home, and, you have like 30 of your family members there for a game in Ohio. Columbus isn't that far away. Like you said, you mentioned Dublin, where he kind of spent a lot of his childhood. But yeah, I definitely think, wanting to produce in front of your family members and have a great game. He was signing autographs before the game to Ohio State
Wow.
fans who made the trip. So, he kind of broke their hearts at the end of the game, obviously. But,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were very happy to see him. He still has a lot of ties to the Ohio area. But, yeah, I think he's an absolute stud. Like I said, I hate to put labels on players, but, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Justin Jefferson in a way, just kind of his route running and some of the things he does, just the speed and the precision and everything like that. And also he's level headed too as well. He's not like a diva type receiver there. He's one of those guys that, he has a good head on his shoulders, played at Ohio State, obviously played with a lot of big time receivers there. Had another one, Chris Olave, who was drafted in the first round too, as well as for the Saints. And, he has a silent confidence about himself that you really don't see with a lot of players, especially coming out of college these days. So yeah, I definitely think he has all the tools to be a successful receiver, and I think you kind of saw some of that glimmer of that yesterday.
The Jets were down 13 with 1:55 to play. They became the first team to overcome a 13-point deficit inside the 2 minutes of the fourth quarter to win a game since 2001. That stat courtesy of Peter King's Monday Morning Quarterback. So, Antwan, is this sustainable? Because obviously they benefited. Cade York misses a late PAT, and the Jets deserve all the credit in the world for coming back, showing some fight. Their schedule, you mentioned it early on about the Bengals. Bengals at Steelers, Dolphins at Green Bay, at Denver versus New England versus Bills, then their bye. Can they continue to win with the way that they have been playing in these games? They've been falling behind. Is Flacco's arm, is Mike LaFleur's evolving offense, is Salah's discipline and determination and the never give up attitude of the team? Do you think they can sustainably, consistently win games this season with this schedule, with how they've been playing so far?
At the beginning of the year, I probably would have said no, because the schedule is daunting. Like, you look at it and you're like, that is brutal that they gave him that type. They gave him all the AFC North opponents like right in a row. And then you got to go play the Dolphins, division rival, who, by the way, had their big comeback yesterday too. I'm sure we'll get into that shortly. But yeah, I mean, I think the schedule. The thing you find out is the game time goes on. The schedule, you kind of find out what these teams are. You find out Cincinnati has some kinks in their armor. They still have some of the issues that were plaguing them last year with the offensive line. Joe Burrow's got sacked 13 times, I believe, in 2 weeks. I mean, he's not going to be upright, the whole season if that continues. So that's definitely something that if you're the Jets defense, you're licking your chops at. Pittsburgh, I mean, they end up losing to New England. Who's to say the Jets can't possibly go in there and, get out a win there and whatever it's called now. I was going to say Heinz Field, but I don't even know what it's called now
That's
anymore.
right, I don't remember. I got Brownie the Elf on the brain still from Cleveland. That must have been weird to see.
Well, I actually like the Elf logo. Some people don't, but
all right.
But yeah, I mean, division games can go either way. Obviously, Buffalo and I think the Dolphins have shown they're a playoff team. But yeah, I think what you want to see is just growth from this Jets team. You don't want them to. Yeah, they're going to have their bumps in the road, especially when you have a young team like this. But you definitely just want to see them continue to grow and just eventually evolve into a potential playoff team. I had them picked for 7 wins this year. I kind of got a little nervous after the Ravens game, but I figured if they win this, then I still feel like they could possibly get there. And then we'll see what happens when Zach Wilson comes back, possibly against the Pittsburgh Steelers in a couple of weeks too, as well. But yeah, I definitely think they could sustain this. I just think if they can use the run game too as well, to also generate some pass offenses as well, and keep whoever the quarterback is upright. Then yeah, I definitely think they could win 7, maybe 8. 8 games, maybe, if things fall out the right place too. But we'll see.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Zach Wilson, because that's what my next question was. So obviously Zach Wilson is the future. Joe Flacco is not. You wish Zach Wilson were healthy and hadn't gotten hurt, hadn't needed the surgery. But when Flacco has a game like this, when you see the players rally around him, the coaches rally around him. I mean, Robert Saleh talks about him like he's his favorite guy on the team. When Zach Wilson comes back, is it just as simple, Antwan, as this kid's our future, our high draft pick, he's going back in, no matter what Flacco is doing? Is that what you do if you're Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, and the Jets? Or do you have something to think about if Flacco carries the Jets to another win against Cincinnati? Do you maybe extend Wilson's recovery time? How do you view all of that?
I think you just play it by week to week. If the team continues to rally around Joe Flacco and he keeps putting up these 300-yard games and you keep winning, then, don't take it out. Don't take him out. I mean, I think Bill Parcells said this once that, you can lose your job because of injury. And, if the team is doing well with Joe Flacco, the Jets hadn't, like I say, they've gone 11 plus years without making the playoffs. If Joe Flacco all of a sudden turns into Kurt Warner late on his career, kind of what happened with Kurt Warner and Matt Leonard when they had drafted Leonard like 10th overall from the Cardinals, just ride out the hot hand. Like maybe it lasts, 5 or 6 games, maybe it lasts the entire year. But I definitely think you just play it week to week, see how things go, and then take it from there. But if Flacco keeps winning, then I don't see any reason why to, go away from that, despite, I think Zach Wilson, I know why Zach Wilson is the future of the team, but if Flacco just if you're putting up 300-yard games and like 2 or 3 touchdowns and you continue to win, why mess up that recipe of success?
Man, what a crazy, intriguing evolution of the season it would be if the Jets turned out to be so successful with Flacco that there was actually a controversy over whether to play Zach Wilson, who was the obvious have to start him prior to that preseason injury. That would be a wild thing to follow, and to follow in your New York Daily News coverage. Antwan is now covering the Jets and writing about the NFL. I'm doing the Giants, writing about the NFL. So we're colleagues now. It's great having him on board with the Daily News. Super excited. Glad you were able to get such an exciting experience in Cleveland. And before we move off the Jets, I wanted to ask you about their defense, because we talk a lot about their offense here, but Cleveland did have 184 yards rushing. They were 8 for 12 on third downs. So we're excited about the Jets victory. You're a Jets fan. You're excited about what Flacco and the offense did late, some of the special team successes. But who is standing out and helping on defense? And then what needs to be cleaned up on that side of the ball for them to be able to handle Joe Burrow and the Bengals?
Well, we talked about the tale of 2 weeks between the Ravens and Browns game, but it was also like that with defense too. Despite them losing last week, they held Lamar Jackson to 17 yards rushing, which I think is pretty, outstanding. Incredible. They were able to do that and limit that rushing game. However, they did give up some big plays in the passing game, and and of course the Ravens ended up winning. Yesterday, the rush game against Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb just ran all over him for 3 touchdowns, and it's tough because he's one of the better running backs in football. I definitely think the rush defense certainly has to improve there as well. You hope so, especially when you got Joe Mixon coming to town, who was another dynamic running back there. So, they definitely have to clean that up, and also consistently get pass rush on the quarterback too. You got the Bengals. We talked about their issues protecting Joe Burrow. It's up to guys like Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson, John Franklin Myers to be able to get consistent pressure on the quarterback position. So, I definitely think I think those are the things that kind of stick out. But as far as specific players, I think Jordan Whitehead is sticking out. Also, Sauce Gardner. I've been really impressed with Sauce because it's hard to be a rookie cornerback in this league, because you got these receivers you're coming from, a league like he played in the American Conference at Cincinnati, and then you're coming from that to the NFL where you're going up against guys like Jamar Chase and Mike Evans, or even like Stephon Diggs, or later on he'll go up against Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill on a consistent basis. But he's held his own at least the first couple of weeks of the season. Now he's going to get a tremendous test this upcoming week with Jamar Chase. So, we're really going to see, it's going to be kind of a measuring stick game to see where really he is, at his maturation in the NFL. But I have been impressed so far with him.
One thing that's exciting, I think, if you're a Jets fan or just even an NFL fan looking and listening to what you're saying about this team, is you're saying that some of the blue chip prospects, Sauce, you're mentioning Garrett Wilson, you're talking about young players who are making plays. And I'm covering the Giants every day. You're at the Jets every day. Teams that are rebuilding and trying to build for the future, but also when you need those contributions from these guys now, and also good signs that they are building towards the player and prospect, especially when you drafted them in the first round, like the players we're talking about. So who knows if the Jets have the quarterback position solved long term, which is a huge question, as we've talked about. But I feel very encouraged listening to you that some of these young players are, yes, it's not perfect, but they're working through it and they're making plays in a victory on the road in a hostile environment like Cleveland. That's great to see. Antwan, I wanted to ask you too. I mentioned a little bit.
I was going to say real quick. Yeah, I didn't
sure.
mention Breece Hall or Jermaine Johnson. Breece Hall had led the team in rushing yesterday. So, props to him as well. He's also somebody that's standing out there. They have kind of like a two-headed attack with him and Michael Carter. And then Jermaine Johnson got his first sack against the Ravens. So, yeah, they're hitting on their picks at least so far. We'll see if that continues.
So speaking of making big impacts in first year, as I mentioned, you've just come to the New York Daily News, making a big impact already. And, just for our listeners, especially in the New York area, could you tell me and tell them a little bit about what you've done prior to this, how you got here, or what you've covered? Because I know you have a ton of experience covering football. Just wanted you to explain it to the listeners as you've explained it to me.
Well, some people might know, I covered the Dolphins for like 7 years there for various outlets, including USA Today and the Palm Beach Post, which is down there in South Florida. So, I got a chance to, see a lot of, mediocre football that way too. And then I covered the, Carolina Panthers too as well for a couple of years. And, prior to coming here, I was covering the Oregon Ducks there. And also I covered Florida State for a year, the Florida State athletics and football. So, I have a ton of football experience, whether it be college or pro football. So, I'm just glad to be here and, be amongst this exciting journey, especially with you too as well. So, I think it's like a good tag team that we have going on.
And I'm glad that you mentioned Miami and the 7 years with the Dolphins, because that just lets the listeners know, Miami, the Dolphins, Hard Rock Stadium like the back of your hand. Tua Tagovailoa, 6 touchdown passes, Antwan. Tua beating the Baltimore Ravens. Huge comeback, throwing the ball down the field. Let's just be honest. He did a lot of things that a lot of people, a lot of doubters, including me, didn't think he could do. I mean, this guy's setting a record-setting performance in an NFL game against a team that a lot of people are picking among one of the best in the AFC when all is said and done with Lamar Jackson. From what you know about the Dolphins, from what you know about that organization, and what you know just from around the league and about Tua too, were you surprised by that performance? Why do you think it happened? Do you think that's an anomaly? Do you think he is capable of this every week?
Well, not 6 touchdowns, definitely no. But I looked up the stat. I was like, when's the last time I seen a 6 touchdown performance? And I remember Mitch Trubisky had one his rookie year, which I was like, really? Like I forgot. I mildly forgot about that, and then I was like, wow, yeah. So, him and Mahomes had one not too long ago. I think 2018. They both each had one. But, I think I think the Dolphins have been smart to add the pieces they have around Tua. They know his limitations. They know he's, had some injury concerns there. They've improved the offensive line. They got some speed, adding Tyreek Hill to go with Jalen Waddle. Also have Cedric Wilson there as well. Chase Edmonds in the running game too as well. So, they've improved the offense a ton there. So they're just asking Tua, just don't lose the game for us. Don't make mistakes and just rely on your playmakers. And, I definitely think they can do that. He doesn't have to go out there and be Patrick Mahomes or anybody like that. They just need him not to, make minimal mistakes and turn the ball over. He did that early on in the game.
But hold on a second. This is what I'm saying. Yes, he looks like a game manager. Yes, it looks like, hey, make these short throws, catch and run. That's not what happened here. He was gunning the ball down the field. Yeah. He was launching it over top of the defense to Waddle and Hill. If you're Mike McDaniel, do you watch this tape? Do you look at this game and say, wait, he can do it? We got to open this thing up. Yeah. Or do you rein it back into, no, like this is the recipe. We'd rather not be in a Tua chuck it mode.
I think it depends on your opponent too, because styles kind of make fights too. And then we know the Ravens were dealing with a lot of injuries, especially in the secondary. So yeah, I mean, why not have him air it up? But they know he can do it. They have a confidence that Tua can throw the ball deep when a lot of people were doubting, his ability to do that. So yeah, I definitely think it'll be times where, he throws the ball, at somebody 30, 40 times maybe a game because they need him to. But I also think it might be times where, yeah, you have a good secondary, you decide, you know what, maybe it's better to run the ball just for, be game manager too as well. So I think it's just going to depend on the opponent. Like they got Buffalo coming up next week. I doubt he throws the ball like that. If he throws the ball like that against the Bills and they have that success, then I think the Dolphins might have a chance to get to the Super Bowl if they're able to do something like that. But
wow,
yeah, I definitely I think it's gonna just you're gonna see it a little bit raining back against the Bills a little bit. But playing down in Miami, after what I saw against the Ravens, I give them a puncher's chance to be able to pull that out.
Well, and so you're leading me right into my final question, which is, can they win this division? Can the Dolphins win the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills? The Patriots obviously don't look like the team they used to be, but they do eke out a win against Pittsburgh. Bill Belichick can't count them out. The Jets showing some spark here with Joe Flacco. So how do you see this division shaking out? And most importantly, is Miami a contender to unseat Buffalo at the top of it?
The Bills were my Super Bowl pick, so I'm still going to stick with that. However, I think the Dolphins can challenge them, certainly, especially with the playmakers they have at the skill positions. I just think it was going to come down. They have not beaten the Bills since 2018. I was still covering the beat then. They've only beat Josh Allen one time in his career, his very first game against the Dolphins.
I didn't know that.
After that, he's ran out 7 consecutive wins against Miami. So until I see them actually beat Josh Allen and the Bills, then no, I'm still going to go with Buffalo to win that division. But I do think the Dolphins are a wild card team, and if they match up with the Bills 3 times, who knows what might happen? Whenever you play a team 3 times, you kind of know what they do. You know what they do, and they know what you do. Then maybe they could pull off a win in the playoffs. But as of right now, yeah, I'm definitely picking the Bills.
He is Antwan Staley from the New York Daily News. Antwan, thank you for joining us right off the plane from Cleveland, unpacking this Jets win. And we will hopefully talk to you down the road. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.